Views and opinions expressed within the following program are solely those of the individual. These views and opinions do not necessarily represent those of Shaw TV.
What's up, Calgary? Thanks for joining us for Season 4. I'm Kevin Chorney. It's September 19th, and this is Calgary Now.
Tolerance versus acceptance. Depending on the dictionary definition you look at, tolerance means permitting, allowing, or enduring a deviation from the norm. Acceptance, on the other hand, takes it a step further, enduring without protest or accepting it as a new reality or standard. The distinction is an important one. Are we a tolerant society or an accepting one? There are institutions, programs, and laws in place that require a community to accept newcomers, ways of life and beliefs that differ from the majority. Yet, many minority communities don't feel acceptance. Their lives differ from the majority and in some cases have less than others. Equality is a highly regarded value in many cultures and one Canadians strive for, yet inequality is an ongoing problem despite the progress that's been made. While it's commendable to uphold one's culture, values, and way of life, when it's at the expense of another's, is it time to reevaluate our level of tolerance and acceptance to have a more equal and productive society?
Okay, so for as long as civilization has existed, there's been discrimination, hatred, divisiveness, ignorance, and bigotry. It's been a part of our city just as in any other urban center. But over time, thankfully, those attitudes have waned amongst most of us. This shift in attitude, coined as tolerance, has allowed us all to coexist. Nowadays, perhaps acceptance rather than simply tolerance has taken a foothold here, which will hopefully allow the culture and community spirit of our city to flourish. So, where do we stand? Are Calgary citizens simply a tolerant group, or have we evolved into a group of accepting people eager to share what makes us unique and embrace the uniqueness of those around us? I'm about to mix it up with my guests and find out where they think our city stands. You want to join the discussion? Get involved. Shoot us a tweet at Calgary Now Show. To start us off, let's check in with the Rant Pack.
I think Calgary is a great city. It's accepting and tolerant altogether. That being said, being a minority, you run into funny situations. At times, people kind of get annoyed at you, / they wonder, why do you talk so loud with your friends? Why does it sound like you're arguing all the time? Things that are odd, or maybe they get amused with certain things you do, like you can't ever eat a piece of chicken because somebody's gonna be like, oh, how typical he's eating chicken. So we still have some work to do, but overall you can be very comfortable in this city being a minority. We're going in the right place.
That was Ike from our Rant Pack, and now it's time to meet the guests. We've got, first and foremost, my man, Kobe. Oh, pardon me here. Kobe Abrokwa, pardon me, pronounce your last name for me if you would.
Abrokwa.
Abrokwa. See, thanks very much. Clearly unprepared. First row of the season, bear with me. Dr. Darren Lund from the University of Calgary, and Andrew Zhao. Guys, thanks a lot for being here. Kobe, let's start with you. I understand you're from the Black Gold Awards.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about the Black Gold Awards.
The Black Gold Awards is an awards that we've just set up to help create awareness for the youth, to know that they have role models in the society, people they can look up to, and basically it's just celebrating culture, cultures from different places, Africa, Caribbeans, Black Canadian culture, and that's what it's all about.
Awesome, awesome. It's garnering a lot of attention, it seems, as well nowadays. Dr. Darren Lund from the UFC. I understand you. Well, tell me a little bit about what you do, I suppose.
My job is kind of to raise issues of social justice, so a really broad spectrum of diversity issues, particularly with people training to be teachers. So we're trying to look at, we're getting a really diverse student population. Yeah. How can each of us be better at being a teacher for each of those kids? But it does involve lots of sort of uncomfortable conversations about areas of diversity that, you know, not a lot of us are really comfortable talking about.
Hence why you're on the panel today. Thanks for being here. And Andrew, a little bit about yourself.
I work at Scotiabank right now, and before I went to MRU, and I joined a student club at the UFC as well, so I participate a lot with other students at the UFC.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. Now, guys, our city, you know, I'm sure we talked a little bit off camera before the show. I know you guys have, well, of course, Doctor, you've been in the city for quite a while. But gentlemen, your whole life, yeah. But gentlemen, you guys have been here, you know,
2.5 years.
About 2.5 years, you say about 8 years. Now,
Yes.
based on other cities and past years in Calgary, how prevalent nowadays is bigotry in Calgary?
Well, I think that it's not prevalent. I think that from what I've seen, it's a very accepting city. You can basically go anywhere and do anything and be yourself as much as you want, and you don't cause problems for anybody. Nobody's going to cause problems for you. So I think Calgary is a very great city to be in.
Sounds like that's a passing grade. That's good to hear. Doctor,
Well, thanks for having us here. Good night. And, it's funny because I think that way as well. I think what a great city we live in, and I've lived in other cities and came back to Calgary about 11 years ago, and I really see a shift from when I was growing up here, where it was very common to tell racist jokes or hear them out loud, even in polite company among professionals and all of that. So you could say we've become way more polite about our racism.
A little bit more mature. Well, polite about our racism.
I think
so. You
so.
think it still exists? It sounds
I think there's still an undercurrent. I know I was raised in a particular way, and many of us were, with a really kind of entrenched belief about how white people really are superior. It was never said like that, but we're sort of swimming in it all the time. And even if you look in our media and everything, just read a paper, my people are doing very well, and we're ahead of companies, all of that. So it's still sort of, I think it's unstated, but it's still sort of simmering along the surface. And even though you won't hear like hostile things shouted out across a crowded room, I'm still thinking we find other ways of talking about things that may still be kind of discriminatory.
Yeah,
you would agree with it.
Yeah, I actually agree with Doctor. Though some of my friends, they still they're pretty close to me, so sometimes they make those jokes. But I'm pretty fine, and because the reason they make the jokes because we're pretty close friends. But I think if somebody else is in a situation, probably they'll feel uncomfortable about that.
Yeah, sure, that's understandable.
Yeah.
But how are we perceived, you think, as a city, as a gay male who's been in the city about 3 years now?
Yeah.
What was your first impression? What's our reputation is what I'm getting at. What's the common belief of Calgary from an outsider's perspective? Before you moved here, what did you think of our city? What did you heard?
Before I moved here, what I heard is I kind of agree with Corey, like our city is very accepting, but it's also a kind of conservative city as well. I mean, compared to where I come from, like in Asia, Calgary is much more accepting than the city I come from. But there are also other stories that compare Calgary to Toronto or maybe Vancouver and those cities. Like the people living there, they all feel like Vancouver or Toronto will be more accepting than Calgary.
It seems to be the common belief.
Yeah, just within Canada though.
But I think it's a misconception though, isn't it? I mean, we look at our gay pride parade, for example, which I think is garnering phenomenal following nowadays. I mean, this one, I think it was 30,000 people went out to the parade.
Yeah, this year is pretty.
Not long.
Yeah.
To me, that speaks volumes as to showing, I guess, other cities that look, we are a city that is welcoming, everybody, and people should feel. I think to spread that word, as Calgarians, we should be able to spread that word and really be shouting at the top of our lungs.
And you're right. You're right, because like I said earlier, there's some cities that you go in that you feel you're not too comfortable going to certain places. But Calgary, 3 a.m. in the morning, you could be walking from wherever you went going home, and you're fine. Nobody's bothering you. You're not afraid anybody's coming out at you and all that. And that is what makes Calgary very accepting.
I mean, I've seen lots of changes, as I said, over the years, but even on the issue of gay, lesbian, transgendered, in the last 5 years, we've seen the city shift quite a bit. I mean, we've seen our laws across Canada shift, but Calgary particularly, I mean, I would still say that we have a ways to go. So we can't pat ourselves on the back too much. If you think about, is there a street in Calgary you can think of where it's safe for two men to walk together holding hands? I can think of lots of streets that are safe for my wife and I to walk down. But think about a gay couple. You could say they have all the legal rights in the world. Gay pride parade, you could see them, enjoying and everything. I was the grand marshal of the gay pride parade 5-6 years ago. There were only a few hundred people there. It was kind of, maybe a few thousand, but it was pretty quiet affair.
Well under 10,000 people.
Yeah, mayors would never come near it. The premier would never come near it.
Of course,
it was sort of I don't know, a lot of people were fearful.
But I mean, you raise an interesting point. I mean, we're talking about acceptance, from a distance perhaps. But
Yeah.
when we're talking about walking down the street, you're holding your hand with your significant other. I mean, Andrew, I'll just put it to you. Is there a place in the city that maybe you wouldn't feel comfortable doing that?
I would agree with the doctor though. Says I would say that probably for most of the places in Calgary, for most of the gay couples or lesbian couples or LGBT, like whatever, they won't feel comfortable holding hands to walk down the street.
They will not.
They will not. One story I know is one of my friend. It was in Chinook and it was a couple years ago, maybe 2 years ago, and he was walking in Chinook with his ex-boyfriend, and they were holding hands, and there were so many people staring at them, which made them feel a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe people, they are not judging, or maybe they are not doing anything, they just like stare at you and look at you, but this kind of behavior will make those people who are being stared at feel uncomfortable.
Well, I can understand that, I suppose, but isn't that the first reaction that a lot of people are going to have to something they haven't seen before? Isn't that part of the process to eventually accepting? Are we maybe a little bit too quick to judge people, or am I missing the mark here? When I say judge people, I mean judging those who would be staring, would be looking. Maybe you're making assumptions that they're assuming things.
I mean, in my mind, it's like driving down the street and seeing a really, really nice car. Your first instinct is to look.
Yeah.
Especially if you've never seen that type of car before.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're thinking something bad about the car. It's just instinct, right? But so I look at it as, is it normal human behavior? I believe so. Is it part of the process to get to, people getting to know who you are and where you're from and taking you for who you are? I believe so.
I think there's a better way to do it. Is that not
I
a fair
love
thing
how
to say?
positive you are, man. That's awesome. Because not too many people see a beautiful car driving down the road and yell out faggot at that car, right? So that's the difference, I think, where like my friends who work for the Calgary Police Service, those in the hate crimes unit and cultural diversity unit, there's still some expressions of hostility in the city. And when I do work in the area of racial diversity, people are, oh, good for you. And when I do work around, let's help make schools safe for gay and lesbian kids, I am the target of a lot of hate. And so I've had death threats.
That's really disappointing.
It's brutal. And it's of only a few people, let's say. So it's a very small minority. But enough so that there are people out there that are trying to do harm to those who would make schools safe for gay kids.
We're going to take a quick break. It's time to hear from our Rant Pack. We'll continue the discussion right after this.
Acceptance and tolerance in Calgary is growing as time passes. I believe that as a city as a whole, we're a very accepting and tolerant society. There is a difference between the two words. I think personally we should all gather towards acceptance. To me, it doesn't really matter what color you are. If you're gay, I don't care what you do in the bedroom. I don't care which color you are.
So speaking to the backlash about the Black Gold Awards, and I know some people were saying, what if there were the White Gold Awards and the this and the that, and just the idea of kind of celebrating one group over the other. I think it's kind of being looked at wrong. I think that we should embrace the fact that we are a mosaic, we're a melting pot culture. We come from so many different backgrounds, so it's worth to me celebrating Black people, white people, Asian people, all kinds. I don't think it's meant to alienate. I think it's meant to embrace how we are different and how great of a thing that is.
Welcome back to the discussion. Now, Kobe, you saw Justine there. She touched briefly on the Black Gold Award. She's actually a nominee, so congrats to Justine.
Yeah, congratulations to her.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's been a little bit of talk, though. There's been almost, a bit of quiet animosity about the Black Gold Awards, which, personally I'm not so sure I agree with or even can understand it, but you've got this corner that's shouting, well, where's the White Gold Awards? Is that a valid gripe?
I think from my point, looking at Calgary as very accepting and knowing what the Black Gold Awards is all about, I'm not sure I understand why people look at it differently, because it's all about celebrating culture. It's an extension of what Calgary has become, a very multicultural city. So it has nothing to do with race or this race against that race or excluding people. No, it's all part of culture. What your culture will be very different from mine. But at the end of the day, if I can show you what my culture is, and if, you know, I'm welcoming that, you know what, I need you to be there. I want everybody in Calgary to show up for the show and witness what the culture is all about. That's great. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I think that's really well spoken. I think it's sad that some people, you know, tend to stoke that fire of divisiveness by even raising the issue.
Right. I mean, it's sometimes if there are groups that are have historically been less privileged, right? So in some ways, these are important sort of milestone events, just like a gay pride parade. You say, where's the straight pride parade? Or where's the straight students club? And you think, we have one. It's called the football team.
Yeah, sure.
But the
well, maybe not 100%.
But seriously though, it's groups that are seeking equity or that are moving toward a more equitable treatment. And so to have moments of celebration and moments of like solidarity, where you can actually say, you know, a women's group that says, let's just talk about these issues for now, but then bringing in the larger population as part of that discussion as well. I think that's really healthy.
Yeah, absolutely, I would agree. Now let's take it a step further, though. You look at Calgary as a whole. Now there's no secret that, you know, in the northeast quadrant of our city, you are seeing predominantly new Canadians moving and living in that area. Now, I think it makes sense for a few reasons. Obviously, a lot of these people, you know, English is not going to be their first language, and you're going to live amongst, you know, at least initially, where things are going to be a bit easier for you. I mean, we all seen some stats on immigration in Canada, and it's, you know, it's the same in Calgary. It's tough, you know, it's tough to make a buck for a new Canadian. But with that said, is that near segregation, is that an example of our city's tolerance, or is it the opposite? Is it a lack thereof?
That's a great question, because Calgary is very segregated in some ways.
I think it can be.
We have a really rich demographics. Like Calgary's demographics is very much like Canada's. We have a really great mix of people here.
Yeah,
right? So we could say, look at Calgary and great mayor, all that.
Yeah.
So we have lots to be proud of, but it is quite geographically segregated. Yeah. So you can actually go, if I want, I can drive to a school that will only have white kids in it, and it's a public school.
Yeah.
And I know exactly where to find a school that might have one white kid in it. So it is quite like that still in Calgary.
But is that an example of us being a tolerant group of citizens? By saying, okay, you know, I understand that this is your choice. This is going to make it easier for you. Go for it. Go for it as a citizen. Or is it just the opposite, though? Is it tolerance, or is it intolerance that's forcing that?
I wonder.
It's not necessarily a bad thing.
I don't think it's any of the two. I think we're looking at a totally different scenario here. Like you said, it's all about, okay, I came to Canada, I don't speak very good English, I need to get around, I need people to help me out, I need people who can understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, of course.
If I go live somewhere where there's nobody there to understand me, then I might have problems. Yeah. On the other hand, if I don't speak the language very well and I just moved here, most likely the job I get will not pay me enough for me to be able to get a good place to, you know, a different place to live. So there's a lot of factors. I don't think it has anything to do with tolerance or intolerance. I think it's just a different set of factors that drives that.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Andrew, would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree with that. If you're like a new Canadian and if English is not your first language, after you come here, usually the jobs you get in the beginning won't be so good paid. And with that kind of salary, then probably there are only several locations you can look for your housing. And so it ends up with new Canadians, like they get up living in the same neighborhood.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, I think roles reversed is the best way to kind of examine it. If I were to move to a new country, and let's say I moved to China, and I speak a little, you know, hazy Chinese, Mandarin, I'd be looking for the first group of English-speaking people I could find. And I think it's pretty quick that people don't really take the effort to put themselves, they don't empathize. And I think a lot of that, a lack of empathy, really does contribute to, you know, us not having quite the level of acceptance that I think maybe we'd all like to see in the city. We are an accepted city, but I think we can always improve.
I think we can improve, yeah. And I think what happens is a lot of white people, and I will speak for all white people in Calgary right now.
Okay.
My people,
big shoes to wear.
My people feel this way, and let me. It's ridiculous. I would never do that, right?
No,
and yet, if you meet someone, you say, "Well, what do Chinese people? What do black people think about Calgary?" You're not saying that, but I'm saying it's very common, right?
Yeah.
But I think for many people, like white people, there's this kind of sense that it's awkward to talk about because I don't know exactly what you want to be called. And don't know if I say this, I might be, being rude,
Insensitive,
offensive.
Yeah.
So I try and give a lot of our students, particularly because they're going to be teachers, give them permission to sort of make those mistakes and build relationships with people.
Just ask, right?
And get to know their kids as people.
Yeah.
And they are, you will need to learn a lot, right? But learn it from them.
Is there a risk that we've, become really, like, are we not getting too sensitive where we can't just outright ask somebody, like, where are you from originally?
Well, that can be loaded though, right? Because if someone just keeps walking up and asking you, where are you from? You're not obviously not from here. It could be offensive after a while where you think, I am from here.
Yeah,
Whereas
sure.
nobody asks me where I'm really from.
I'm sure you've probably had this question. How do you
Never been
respond?
asked where I'm from.
Well, you ask me where I'm from, I will tell you where I'm from. It's a question. There's nothing else to it. I mean, I don't know what you're thinking. All I can do is listen to what you're saying. It's not like you're coming to me and saying, Kobe, where are you from, and wherever you're from must be bad and all. No, you're just asking a very simple question.
That's right.
Maybe that's a way of getting to know who I am. It's like you come to me and you ask me, what's your name? Well, my name is Kobe. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I like that. It's a good attitude to have.
If it's the same person coming to you and asking the same question over and over again, yes, natural human behavior.
Yeah.
You probably might be like, you want me to
of
write it for you or something? but you know what I mean? That's it's good. It's just a question. You answer it, and life goes on.
So much is the tone, right? It's the
very good
the
point.
way someone will ask you
Yeah,
a question.
and also could be like a way to start a conversation.
Yes.
See, like, oh, I've been to the country that you come from, and this is what I know, and you can start a conversation with somebody and get to know someone.
Yeah. What about the media? Let's talk a little bit about the media.
Oh, don't get us
Well,
started.
you knew it was going to come up, right? I mean, what role, how much responsibility, and I think personally in today's society it's a pretty big responsibility, but what is the media doing to heighten those stereotypes which inevitably lead to intolerance?
Let's go into print media for a second
Sure.
and just flip through any newspaper. It doesn't have to be a raggy kind of newspaper. It could be a major daily in a major Canadian city.
Okay.
And just flip through the paper and just look at representation. So you're doing a kind of a racist activity where you're labeling, but even just generally speaking, how are people represented? And I love doing that activity with students, and you can really see, does it approximately match Canada's demographic or Calgary's demographic?
It's a great exercise,
And,
sure.
and where are people? So if I'm looking for, let's say, Black Calgarians, there's tons of Black and African and Caribbean Calgarians. So where will I find them? I don't see any on these business pages. Oh my goodness, there we are in the entertainment section.
Yeah.
And sports, there we are. So in some ways, it's reflecting society. But in another way, we're seeing certain groups overrepresented in all kinds of interesting ways, and other groups really pigeonholed into exotic stories.
So true.
So
So
it
true.
feels like that. But
Yeah.
once you look and notice that, it's kind of awkward.
You'd agree with that, Andrew?
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, it's just so in your face, isn't it?
Well, to be honest, I can't talk much about the media. I don't know much about.
One of the smart ones, maybe. That's a good call.
Yeah, exactly. Because I only been here for 2.5 years, so I don't get much chances to touch with all the medias. Like I don't read
That's fair,
newspapers
that's
much.
fair. You have to admit, though, I mean, it frustrates me as a white guy. I mean, as a guy of color, it's got to be a little bit frustrating. Print media,
Come on, man.
turn on the TV.
No,
I mean,
see, this is the thing. Okay, so
I'm
when
not trying to incite anything. I'm just saying, it's an observation.
No, it's great. When I turn on my TV, what do I want to watch? I want to watch sports. I want to listen to the news. I probably want to watch some show here and there, right? All those shows, as much as you don't see a lot of people of color in there, you still see some there, right? So I think people just need to, every time it becomes a black and white issue, just look within yourself and find out, what are you thinking about in that moment? Where are you coming from?
So
What's
it's
your
only going
thought
to affect you
process?
the way you allow it to affect you.
Exactly. This is what I'm trying to say, right?
Wise words, wise words. I got to cut you off though real quick. We're going to jump to a break. Let's hear from Derek and Julie from the Rant Bank.
The politics of language is explicitly done through the words acceptance and tolerance. And it defines how we as citizens in a city like Calgary live, whether we tolerate communities or whether we accept communities. As we've seen through things like the Pride Parade, acceptance can happen after time and after tolerance. And that's something that we really, really need to work on, especially with enclaves like we have.
I guess there's some possibility that I'm naive, but I've lived here all my life mostly, and I don't understand this city to be intolerant. I find this city to be generous and accepting and generally a good place to live, but then this is me. The only thing I would say is where it concerns First Nations, I think people are really, really clued out. And that's one area that I would like to see people learn more and dispense with some stereotypes.
All right, we've only got a few minutes before we have to wrap up our discussion, guys. Did you want to comment on what you just heard Julie say? Or Derek,
I think that's a great point she raised at the end, because we think of ourselves as Canadians, best country in the world, Calgary's probably the best city, all that. But how are we much different than South Africa? You know, we're on a colonized land, the Europeans decided was theirs. We've got a history here of, taking things that we didn't own and colonizing and making a place out of it. So we can't be racked with guilt about that forever, but we can kind of work, we should and can honor the people that were here first, and also like Harper started with the apology, now moving toward reparations and moving toward saying how we can do better. We can do better for the people that were on this land first, and we can see what's, there are lots and lots of First Nations people who are very successful, and lots that also are still struggling. So I think we can be better.
It is something that deserves far more attention. I mean, I think it's tough though. How do you go about doing? I mean, yeah, sure, Harper took the first step, but it's tough.
And how do you live your life as a Canadian and think of yourself as a really good person, and drive by a reserve or see the social conditions for people and just think, yeah, that's fine. I can go to bed at night and never think about that again.
I mean, it's true.
They probably deserve it.
We pat ourselves on the back as being such an empathetic people, but
that's
something like that.
That's a tough point.
It is. It's tough. And probably it could be a show in itself. In all honesty,
should be.
What about parents' responsibilities, though? Young adults with young children. I mean, they say everything starts at the home. I tend to think the media has really crept its way into the home, probably a lot too much, more than it belongs there. But what do parents need to do? I mean, is it their responsibility solely to ensure that their kids are attending school at an early age with the right attitude?
I believe so. I mean, who's the first person the kid sees when they're born? It is your responsibility as a parent to train your kid the right way, whatever you think is the right way, because no matter what they see out there or no matter what they hear out there, based on whatever foundation you've given, that's how they're going to behave, right? So we can't blame it on the media as much as we would like to. We need to look at what we do at home with our kids and what the kids are learning from the parents.
Great point, and not just what we tell them to be like, but actually how we role model it.
Exactly.
Right? That's a tough part.
Yeah, we'll have examples of the parents that are showing to their kids. And you can't say this, you can't be judgmental, and you should be accepting towards these kind of situations.
I'm going to make that the final word. Thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us tonight. I think it's been a pretty good discussion. You can, of course, join us on our Facebook page. If you have any questions, concerns, comments about the show, please leave them there. Join us next week. We're talking architecture in Calgary, 7 p.m. Take care. That was a little awkward at the end.